If you'll give your name, please.
Yes, sir. Craig Overbo, Superintendent, Glen Rose ISD. Appreciate y'all letting us come and speak and moving us up a little bit. We sure appreciate that. And so today we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk to y'all about the progress of the bond projects. Kayla's going to give us some financial information about the situation. Then we're also going to talk about a voter-approved tax rate election, which is going to be on November 5th. And so we're going to talk about those things, but first I want to talk about the expo, because everybody's been talking about it. Not that y'all don't know this whole story also, but I'm just going to tell y'all what we're going to be talking about as we go around the community. And so y'all know that in '94, Glen Rose ISD has had an interlocal agreement with the county that involved the expo. And so two parts of that are how many days the district can use it, and then if the expo would be sold, that Glen Rose ISD basically could step in and have a first right of refusal. And so how this started, back in the spring, the school district got a call from the county, and the county said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to sell the expo. And, we're in a financial situation where we didn't even think twice about it, because we were expecting a $5, $7, $10 million price tag at the minimum on that. And so, we didn't even think twice about it. No, go ahead and put it out for a bid, so on and so forth. And so we come to the situation that we're in now, where there's a bid in for the expo, and we understand that it is, first of all, a hot topic in the community, but we also understand that it's important for the school district to have access to that building. And we also understand that it's important to the community, that the commerce that it brings in. And it's a big draw for our community. And so it's a very unique situation. And so as the school district, we wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing for not just the school district, but for the community. So we jumped in there and used our first right of refusal. And part of that contract that is currently $1.5 million, we took that on. And part of that is a feasibility study, a 90-day feasibility study, which will be done in mid-December. And so that's where we're at right now. And we understand, once again, that it is so important, so we just wanted to take some time. In the event that we would buy that, we have funds in the capital projects account that's the money that we would use. It's not going to be the money that we're going to be talking about today. These would be funds set aside for capital projects that we would use if we would do that. I get it. It's a coincidence. The money that we're going to be talking about, the number that we're going to be talking about today is very similar to the $1.5 million. And so both of these things are not together. They are totally separate. As a district, it's just bad timing for us because we're having to explain all this. And so once again, it is very important for the community, very important for the district. Okay. So let me get back to the bond.
Can we, in an effort to keep them separate and not commingle them, can we stop at this point and say questions and things? And
sure, yes, ma'am.
First, because you had some.
I guess why does the school district want that property?
Because we use it for 10 days throughout the year, and there's some events that we don't have another place to do that with.
Is it not in the contract that's already been proposed that they would allow you to have those 10 days?
It is, yes.
So we wouldn't be giving up 10 days. It would just be they have ownership, but they're still granting you the 10 days.
Currently, yes, ma'am.
So
that would be grandfathered in if they would sell it. It would or would not.
That could not be added to the contract?
Yeah, that can't be a mandatory add.
Possibly, and that's what we're looking at.
And I just don't know. What is the current bid for the expo?
$1.5 million.
It is 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's the bid to buy the property, but how much is it to rehab the property, and how much would that put y'all out?
That's what we're trying to figure out right now. That's why we want to do the feasibility study.
Is there a particular budget that y'all would not exceed?
We haven't got that far with it.
Okay. Okay. How much is in the capital budget for the school?
For that one,
Yeah, for funds and capital projects.
yeah,
9
8,
million? Okay.
9.
That could be
Sorry,
leveraged
dude.
for that exclusively, or that would be,
Around 9 million.
That's for capital projects throughout
Altogether.
the district, yes.
I have a couple of, things that are out in the ether that I was asked. Is it correct that you guys, that the county offered it to you initially to have?
No, like I said,
They offered you the right, but I was asked by somebody, hey, we've been told that the county said y'all can have it and that y'all said no. So I'm just asking it to get it correct. And then is there any conversation around using that property for a bus barn?
we had thrown that out there right in the beginning, but we understand that it's so important with the commerce that it needs to be run similar to where it is right now. We understand that.
Is it the intention of the school district to manage it and everything? I mean, like manage rodeos?
That's what we're trying to figure out right now.
Stuart?
If y'all bought the expo and y'all generated revenue from it, okay, would the money of that revenue go into the IS or the M&O? Thank you.
Does that mean then portion of that then would be Robin Hooded and taken away?
No, sir.
I thought portion of M&O was Robin Hooded.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
But not that.
Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it?
I'm not a fan of Robin Hood, but that's
D.
I just have one last question, and I know that you guys don't have anything firm, but I need to try to understand where your head is, right? So if you're using it 10 days out of the year, then that's 355 other days to use it. So I need to hope that at this point, you guys have at least started to explore what that would look like.
Yes, ma'am.
So what would that look like? Would you hire an event coordinator that would manage I need to know what let's pretend like tomorrow they're like, yep, it's a great idea, let's go, it's not gonna cost a lot. What do you envision as a potentiality?
Well, once again, that's what we're trying to figure out right now. So we've got that 90 days to do a feasibility study to see what it looks like.
You don't have a thought, like, let's say the 90 days comes back and it goes, man, the repairs are minimal and this is a really good deal and you got to snag this up. If you get that answer, you haven't already started to think through, then what from there?
We're doing the best we can right now.
Okay.
I know. That's why it's a feasibility study,
Yeah.
hence the name.
Prior to this coming on the market, what were the intentions of that 8 to 9 million? What were you hoping to achieve with that budget line?
Capital improvements to Glen Rose ISD.
Like buildings like you currently have
Yes, ma'am.
and the bus barn?
HVAC, any capital improvements that you could think of, we have to be able to keep upgrading our facilities besides the bond projects, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute.
More so a rainy day fund than a planned fund, that 9 million.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
All right. So back to the VATRE. So about a year and a half ago, Kayla and I came and talked to y'all about a bond, a $31 million bond, and we appreciate the support for that. We did a $31 million bond without raising the tax rate, and we're going to talk a little bit about more about that here in just a minute. Just to give you a little update on the bond. So projects that are completed already, we've added 3 new playgrounds, fine arts equipment, cafeteria improvements, restroom renovations at the high school, exterior lighting, additional seating at the baseball, softball, and tennis courts. Current projects include parking lot across the street from the intermediate, the connection for the junior high between the gyms and the main building, improvements to the intermediate, the back parent drop-off, 2 pre-K classrooms, the activity center, the big building that everybody can see right now, and then the CTE building. We just poured that slab last week. So it's all very, very exciting. And, once again, all those projects are going on because we moved some pennies around and to not have to raise the tax rate. And so What we're going to talk about today is this VATRE, which is a voter approved tax rate, and a vote for 4 would put $1.7 million in the M&O budget for Glen Rose ISD. And so Kayla is going to talk about the financial situation. Then she's going to talk a little bit more specific about the VATRE.
I'm going to show a video really quick first. That's wrong.
Get this.
Yes.
Hopefully it'll stay on up there.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Right. It'll be all right. You got this.
I think it needs to be turned back on.
Dr. Overbo, it is very impressive what y'all have accomplished. So thank y'all for putting all the attention into this school.
Excited.
It is exciting.
Always go.
Yeah.
Huh?
Emily's at home.
I know. I know.
Now.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can put some sounds all the way up. We can go to the, you think,
Told her to quit drinking.
See if it'll turn on at the TV.
That's what she just said.
It's not going to be very effective about sound.
yes, hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be on live. It's on, Veronica.
Rich.
Do we know if we have sound? If not, Veronica's going to get a speaker. I'm going to try this, but of course it's going to. Okay. we
We'll
did
find
not
out soon
have
enough.
that.
Can you give your full name, please?
Oh, sorry. Kayla Glen. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, it was okay. On in my office.
Oh, nice. Okay. Very good.
That's why it was working.
State's unwillingness to prioritize school funding has triggered deficit budgets across the state. These budget shortfalls are largely due to the passing of House Bill 3 in 2019. This was the last legislative session with a meaningful focus on school finance. However, it negatively affected property wealthy districts like Glen ISD. HB 3 has $6 million in annual funding phased in over the last 5 years. This represented a 25% loss in operating revenue. You couple this with inflation, a simple trip to the grocery store can show you that everything costs more than it did in 2019. Inflation is up 23%. Another factor that comes into play is enrollment. Glen Rose ISD has grown by about 200 students since 2019. This leads us to an equation that simply can't be solved. Glen Rose ISD must educate 200 more students than we had in 2019, with cost up 23% and $6 million less in annual funding.
Glen Rose ISD has always been mindful of local taxpayers. As seen on this chart, Glen Rose ISD consistently adopts a tax rate that is lower than the state average. GRISD also provides a 20% optional local homestead exemption, which is given by very few districts. The average taxable value of a house in Glen Rose ISD before exemptions is $305,000. The 20% local exemption is taken prior to the $100,000 state exemption, which saves taxpayers in Glen Rose ISD 41% compared to surrounding districts. The average ISD tax in surrounding districts is over $1,900. Glen Rose ISD tax is just over $1,100, which is a difference of nearly $800 per year.
Glen Rose ISD is now asking for your partnership in passing a voter-approved tax rate election, also known as the VATRE. If passed, the VATRE will allow for an estimated $1.7 million increase in the amount of local tax dollars that remain in GRISD while maintaining the same tax rate. This is not a tax rate increase. Due to rising property values in Somerville County, Glen Rose ISD is able to maintain the same tax rate at 78.96 cents per $100 valuation. We are asking the Glen Rose community to show your support by coming out and voting in the election on Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Early voting will be held at the Glen Rose ISD Administration Building October 21st through November 1st, and Election Day will be at the Glen Rose City Hall on November 5th, 2024. We appreciate your continued support of Glen Rose ISD. Go Tigers!
You can just shut it and unplug it.
So, picture this, it's 2019. You live in a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home. It's mom, dad, and 2 kids. The ratio of bedrooms to people is great. Plenty of room for guests when they come to visit. Great ratio of bathrooms to household members. You take $100 to the grocery store, you're able to buy everything that you need, and all is right and wonderful in the world. Now, fast forward 5 years, it's 2024. You still live in your beautiful 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home, but now it's mom, dad, and 3 kids. Your family experienced some growth. Our ratio of bedrooms and bathrooms aren't quite the top-notch ratios we once had. Things are a bit tighter. Then you go to the grocery store, but now you no longer have $100 to spend. You only have $75 to spend. Go to the checkout with the same cart that you had in 2019, but that cart that cost you $100 now costs you almost $125. And you're trying to stretch that same cart of groceries over one additional household member. This is a problem. You have $25 less to spend on your groceries. Your groceries cost almost $25 more than they used to, and you're stretching them over an additional household member. Sound familiar? Some of you in this room, that might be a reality. For Glen Rose ISD, it's a very literal reality. So what do you do in that situation? Obvious answers would include find a way to make more money or start living life differently, sacrificing things that you've come to know and expect. As Dr. Overbo mentioned, we came to you not too long ago to ask taxpayers to support our bond, and this bond has allowed us to address some facility-related needs and improvements. As some of you may recall, we spent a good bit of time in that conversation discussing the buckets that you see on your flyer at the top. So a school district tax rate, just as a refresher, it's made up of 2 components. You have your M&O component and your INS component. The M&O side is what's used to fund all of your salaries, operations, utilities, classroom budgets, everything it takes to operate the school district. The INS side can only be used for bond payments and bond issuance costs. Those funds cannot be used to pay teacher salaries. We get the question all the time, you can afford to build these buildings and do all these projects, but you can't pay your people more? No, not with those funds, we can't. So 2 separate issues. The bond, we were addressing the INS rate. Now with this VATRE, we're addressing the M&O side of things. As the video mentioned, things for Glen Rose ISD have become increasingly difficult since the passing of HB 3, which have ultimately led the district to pass a deficit budget for the first time ever, as far as I know. School districts can only generate operating revenue through student growth and property taxes. To state the obvious, additional student growth also requires additional expenditure, so that's not a super effective way of increasing your revenue. So the only other option you have is property taxes, which obviously that's not good for any property owner in this room. So unfortunately, it's about the only option that school districts are left with under the current state funding formula, but that is not something we at Glen Rose ISD want to do, and it's something that we've avoided for a long time and plan to continue to do so as long as possible. So with these constraints on the revenue side of the equation, we have to look at the expenditure side. Glen Rose ISD has always kept a close eye on our budget, on our expenditure side. We've always sought opportunities to save. On case, our entire supply budget for the school district represents 3% of our imminent budget. The biggest 2 pieces in our expenditure side are recapture and payroll. Recapture, Robin Hood that you were referring to, we don't control that. There's nothing we can do. The state sets that, so we have to exclude that from the equation. And we're left with payroll, which represents 75% of our M&O budget. Although hundreds of school districts across the state of Texas are experiencing these same budget shortfalls right now, there are some local school districts that you may be thinking of that haven't passed a deficit budget. So you may be wondering why Glen Rose. Well, I challenge you to take a closer look at those school districts. House Bill 3 impacted property wealthy districts differently than it impacted non-property wealthy school districts. And I guarantee you, if you take a look at some of these districts that have not adopted a deficit budget, and even some that have, they're either taxing at a significantly higher tax rate, they're paying their teachers far less than what we pay our teachers, or they're stuffing far more kids in each classroom than what we do here at Glen Rose ISD, or a combination of all 3 of these. To take a look at some local districts, Granbury ISD has a tax rate of 93.19 cents, just 14 cents higher than Glenrose or 18% higher, and they passed a net zero balanced budget. Godly ISD taxes at over $1.28, which is 50 cents higher or 63% higher than Glenrose ISD, and they passed a $1.7 million deficit budget. Toller ISD is taxing at 95.12 cents, which is 16 cents higher or 20% higher. They pay their starting teachers $12,000 less than Glenrose ISD, and they balanced a net zero balanced budget. Stephenville ISD is at $1.14, 35% higher than Glenrose ISD, or 44%. They also pay their teachers far less than we do at Glenrose ISD, and they passed a net zero balanced budget. Then lastly, Cleburne ISD is taxing at a little over $1.21, which is 42 cents higher than Glenrose ISD, or 53%. And they actually passed a $14 million deficit budget this year, and they're currently in a hiring freeze and a raise freeze. That's just how it looks around this area. One place many districts have started to try to fix this problem that we have is lower teacher pay. This is certainly not an option that we want to consider here at Glenrose ISD. Our teachers deserve higher pay. One could argue that they have the most important job in the world. They're educating our future society, our future leaders, and our future workforce. The same inflation that's hit your home and Glenrose ISD has also hit their home. We pay our staff as well as we can with the current funding formula, but it's not enough to cover what they do day in and day out. And eventually we will begin to lose our teachers to higher paying career opportunities if we can't get to a place that we can give them more meaningful raises that at least match the cost of living increase. The other option some districts have taken is to have fewer staff members, which would ultimately lead to larger class sizes. Again, not an option that equates to a higher quality educational experience for our children. It's no secret that smaller class sizes lead to better instruction. Teachers and staff are able to deliver individualized instruction in those settings, which is just a better educational experience, to state the obvious. Historically, Glenrose ISD has managed to keep a great balance in this area where we could provide individualized instruction, but not at the expense of taxpayers. We've kind of kept that balance there, so we don't have an overstaffed model. But in recent years, we are seeing class sizes climb and increase due to these financial constraints. So all of that to say, there is no perfect solution out there with the current school funding formula. House Bill 3 unfortunately functioned to bring the top performing schools down rather than the bottom schools up. Many of us in this room, including myself, and our family, we moved here because of this wonderful school district. I truly believe this is one of the best places to raise a family and educate your children. This is made possible because we've been able to pay our teachers more than the average school district while maintaining smaller classes than the average school district. This is no longer possible after the passing of HB 3. Glenrose ISD, along with property wealthy districts across the state, have lost millions due to this legislation. This is not a Glenrose ISD problem, it's a statewide problem. Fortunately for Glenrose ISD, past school boards and administration have the forethought to put money back while we could. Even after the phase out of the $6 million began, we were still putting money back for as long as possible in anticipation of the day that we would need it, which is where we find ourselves today. Public education in Texas is grossly underfunded. Texas ranks in the bottom 10% of public ed funding in the nation, although we perform higher than the bottom 10%, but imagine what we could do with adequate funding. So the leaders of the great state of Texas have failed to prioritize public education in recent years, and I urge you to partner with us, not only in this BATRE, a vote for would really help our local school district, but we also need to be advocates across the state for better funding for public education. As the video mentioned, we are not asking for a tax rate increase. We know that most of you are experiencing the same economical factors that we are today, and we're not doing that to anyone here. So luckily, due to the rising property values primarily of the power plant, we're able to keep our tax rate the same by moving some INS pennies over to the M&O side. In doing that, that's going to allow us to keep an additional $1.7 million locally for us to use in our M&O budget and to cut into the deficit budget. Even with that, we're still going to have a nearly $2 million deficit budget. So again, just to kind of reiterate what we were saying, our tax bill here is 41% lower than the surrounding districts. It's nearly $800 cheaper. We intend to keep that going for as long as possible. But we do need some support right now. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Overbo.
So to add to the complexity of this, just like with the bond, when we come to vote in November, it's going to say, according to law, this is a tax rate increase. And so that's just something that we're going to have to continue to get out there and educate people on this, because it is so confusing when you look at it. And so we're excited about this opportunity. We don't want to raise our tax rate, and this is a way to do it without raising the tax rate to cut into some of that deficit budget. So, questions for us?
I think I have dots connected now. So this is the same thing we face.
Absolute same thing.
It's the exact same situation. Okay, that's helped me. Could we have the same, we have the same thing. If the rate is a certain percentage, then even if it's not an increase, we call it an increase. So I get it. Now I got it. I do have one question to connect back to the earlier. If you do purchase the expo and do something with it, have somebody hired to manage it, what have you, would those expenses come out of the M&O?
Yes.
For managing that? Okay.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, 2 questions. No, I thought we couldn't move funds from INS into M&O. So how are we accomplishing this, or am I misdirected?
We're not moving funds. We're actually transferring your tax rate. So our INS funds that we've collected, they have to stay in your INS bank account. Those, you are
But I
absolutely
thought
correct.
the rates
You
that were
cannot move it.
were established
But
and
no, their INS rate, actually, you should set your INS rate in order to pay your bond payment. So because the property values are higher, we need fewer pennies to make that bond payment. So our taxes are
So as long as
property
you're
values
still
went
paying the
up.
bond.
Exactly.
is
We can
that-
still pay the bond with 7.27 cents. We no longer need the full 12 cents because the value of property and especially the power plant went up.
okay.
We can make our
Do you
bond
have an
payment.
emergency fund tied to that INS back bucket? What if property values go down?
We actually have, 2 types of emergency funds. We do have some fund balance in INS, not a large amount. You're not allowed to have a large amount, but we do have a fairly healthy safety net there within that bank account and fund balance. But then also part of our general fund balance designated funds, we have a section designated to help with INS payments if the day were to come that either somebody doesn't pay their tax bill, like a large taxing entity, because there's been times in the past that things get held up in litigation. So we have set aside funds in our general fund balance designation. So we are safe there.
Did you have another one?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
It's okay. So you said even if this passes, we're still have a $2 million deficit. What are we doing about the $2 million deficit? And then I actually have one more follow-up after that.
That's a great question. We're hoping that the state steps in and steps to bat this time, because last time they didn't. They said go, like she was saying, from 2019. We're still doing the same stuff. And then once again, this is a statewide problem. You just watch the news just a little bit and talking about district after district after district or deficit budgets.
Trying to meet in the middle,
Yeah.
not put it all on our local taxpayers. We're doing what we can on our part, hoping the state will come through this summer in a legislative session. If they do not, then
Yeah.
this conversation looks different.
You're right. So yeah, we could be coming to you in next year, the year after that, asking for a tax rate increase, which we don't want to do, but that's the situation we're going to be in.
And then the other part of that, if this doesn't pass, does that mean then that the bond gets paid off sooner since we have more money in the coffers because we're getting more money in INS?
No, so the INS tax rate will be 7.27 cents regardless of if this passes or not. So if this doesn't pass, your tax rate could be 5 cents lower, save you $72 on the average homesteaded property in Somerville County. So $6 a month, small price to pay to support your public education. But it will not help pay the bond off sooner because you can't actually have your INS rate set at a rate that is so high that it's collecting more than what you're needing for your bond payments.
Thank you.
Interesting.
When is the bond paid off? Is it a 20-year bond?
This was a 15-year bond that we just passed. So doing my math right, we paid our first payment, so we'll have 14 more years to go. Most school district bonds are anywhere from 15 to 30 years. Most are on the longer end of that if they're larger, but since ours was on the smaller end of school district bonds.
It's a 15-year note.
Well, I'd like to say that we all know how important education and why people move to Glen Rose and why people bring business here. And I can't tell you how to vote, but it doesn't take long to think about it. So thank y'all for coming. We wish you luck going out and informing more because that's what it's going to take.
I need y'all to help me answer this question because I know I'm going to get this question. What do I tell someone when somebody comes up and said, how come we can afford to buy the expo, but you can't afford to increase teacher pay?
Goes back to the different buckets. Yeah. We can't
so
use
the
capital project
INS
funds.
Is part of the bond, or I thought it was part of the capital
project,
budget
but
out
you
of the
can't
M&O.
use your capital project funds.
But the operation of that expo would come at the expense of M&O, right?
Possibly, yes.
Yeah, that's the.
Obviously, we would be very careful to take on something that was going to increase your M&O expenditures.
If it made money, if y'all found a way to make money with the expo, would that money go back into the M&O?
It would, and it would not be subject to recapture. So your recapture formula is really made up of your, so to put this very shortly, so they look at your students, what they're involved in, and they calculate a weighted average daily attendance. They take that number and multiply it by the basic allotment. That tells you what your bucket size from the state, what you're allowed to keep. They fill that with your tax collections, and then anything over that amount in tax collections is what Robin Hood is. So your other revenue that comes in, say from that, or I mean, any other way that we generate revenue, athletic events, things like that, those are not subject to recapture.
Okay, just before I forget. So the INS is where the capital projects budget is. So it is on the M&O side?
It's, well, so your capital
salaries?
project funds, sorry, this is very confusing.
Yeah,
so your
no,
capital
no,
project funds, it was generated on the M&O side years and years past. So when we say we're putting money back, we have a general fund balance, but also there were several years that past administration, we put money into this capital project funds. All that does, school districts don't have any sort of facility funding from the state. So they give you nothing in your state funded portion that you get to keep to update your facilities, upgrade your facilities, build facilities. You don't get funded that way. So you have to either pass bonds or have money set aside to do those types of things. So we've transferred those over into a capital projects fund that's over there, but it's not, so it's generated by M&O, but it's not functioning under the same rules as your M&O. It's not part of your M&O budget. It's a separate.
So you couldn't like move it.
Yes, it's designated. All of the money in there is designated for across, I believe it's 9 different categories. So the school board can undesignate and redesignate those funds at any given time. One such thing we've recently kind of added is, I don't know if y'all deal with property insurance, I'm sure. It's gone through the roof in recent years, your property casualty. And so we actually have some set aside funds there to help pay deductibles if you were to lose a roof or things like that. So that's kind of your rainy day savings for things like that come up.
Okay. Well, thank y'all. I appreciate that.
One last one. And I don't know if this is something that you want to answer presently on Mike's, but
Sure. Yes, sir.
I understand certain ISDs have chosen to not pay the recapture or the Robin Hood fees. Is that legal? Is that doable? Is that a way that we can keep our recapture also?
It's actually against the law. So those people will end up doing it. People have been trying since 1994 when Robin Hood's been around. People have been trying to get around Robin Hood, and they're still in the same boat today. We've all been complaining about it since then. So
I mean, we're budgeted to send 11 million back to the state. So we wouldn't even be talking about a deficit budget if we could do that. But that's
makes sense, doesn't
it? Like you say, I'd rather teachers get more than
absolutely
for sure. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.